How quickly can your company accelerate? Are you continually delivering results in your highest priority business outcomes? Dan Coughlin, Accelerate Your Business.
My speaking style is very much a teaching style. I try to give people very practical ideas that they can use right away, the very next day at their work. We're focused on real business situations with very practical advice. We practice it right there in the room during the presentation.
The rate of your acceleration relies strongly on three concentrated areas. The first area applies to the role of the individual in the larger whole as it relates to personal effectiveness, leadership, and management.
Leadership is the ability to influence how other people think in ways that generate better, sustainable results both for your organization and the people in it.
Dan Coughlin, a leading authority on business acceleration, believes that dialogue and interaction are at the heart of learning. Dan focuses on audience members learning and accelerating their achievements rather than on providing long-winded lectures. Dan Coughlin, Accelerate Your Business. The second area that will help you accelerate your business is improving the teamwork, communication, and execution of the group.
If I ask any group of people, let's put it this way, and I've worked in over 20 industries, if I ask any group of people, what's the number one issue inside your company? Without a doubt, they will say, communication. As though every other company is great at communication, but they're the only one that has communication issues. Communication is by far and away the biggest issue. Of course it is. Businesses are made up of people. Communication is at the heartblood of it. I guess it was maybe 7 years ago or 8 years ago, Oprah Winfrey asked Steven Spielberg, Steven, why did you use such an unknown actor in your most recent film, Amistad? Now, as you all know, Steven Spielberg is one of the co-founders of a multi-billion-dollar company called DreamWorks. And Amistad was one of their very first films that they made. And so the question Oprah Winfrey was asking Steven Spielberg is, how could you use this relatively unknown person in this unbelievably important role? And Steven Spielberg looked over at Oprah Winfrey and he said, well, first of all, he is a very, very talented actor. And secondly, I really enjoy working with him. And if I'm going to spend 6 months making a movie, I want to enjoy the person I'm working with. And I thought to myself, what a powerful statement Steven Spielberg is making about the importance of effective communication.
Finally, the role of the organization as a whole with an emphasis on strategy, branding, and innovation.
You know, over the last 8 years, I just have been very fortunate. I've had a chance to work a lot with companies like McDonald's, Marriott, Coca-Cola, St. Louis Cardinals. I've easily spent it, combined at those 4 companies, over 100 meetings where I was a meeting participant. Not a seminar like this, but I mean actual their workday meetings. I've learned a lot from sitting in those meetings. And one of the things I've noticed with those great brands is they spend an enormous amount of time talking about how do we preserve and strengthen our brand. That is on their meeting agenda. How do we preserve and strengthen our brand? It is incredibly important. Here are the 6 steps to building a brand that I have seen over and over again. I'll go through these quickly and then we're going to apply this directly to your business. Number 1, define your desired customer. Write down a description of the type of customer you want to work with, whether you are or you're not right now. Number 2, clarify their desired outcomes. What are the most important outcomes that your customer wants to achieve? And then step 3, narrow it down to the 3 highest priority outcomes that your group, your metal supermarkets, can actually help to improve. Step 4, gear every decision toward improving those 3 outcomes, 1, 2, or 3 outcomes. Step 5, be boringly consistent and constantly innovative. In other words, be boringly consistent on improving those outcomes, but be constantly innovative in the way you do it. When I was growing up, when I was in college, I worked at a frozen custard stand for 5 summers. Now, this may not mean a whole lot to you, but the name of the place was Ted Drew's Frozen Custard. It is actually a very well-known place in St. Louis. Unbelievable business this store does. It was rated by USA Today as one of the 10 best places in the country to buy ice cream, although they sell frozen custard. Here's what Ted Drew's did when I worked there. We had a very small store. First thing he said was, we got to make this place much bigger. We went from 5 windows to 15 windows. In those days, we were selling sandwiches. He said, we're not going to sell sandwiches anymore. We are going to just sell dessert. And then he said, but every year we're going to add at least one new dessert to the menu item and see what sticks. And if it doesn't stick, we toss it out, we try something else. But one new item every year. His business went from relatively pretty good to unbelievable in a period of about 5 years because he got a laser focus on a few outcomes. And finally, step 6, market to resonate. Now I know that you don't have these huge advertising budgets, but there's lots of ways, and we're going to brainstorm on this. There are lots of ways that we can market the value that we can offer, especially when we're focused on a targeted customer. All right, let's put this into practice. Roy Disney, completely exasperated, looked at his brother Walt and said, Walt, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to be? And Walt Disney, in a moment of extraordinary genius, looked at his brother and said, we are here to provide quality family entertainment. Our job is to entertain all the members of the family. And with that focal point, the Disney company got busy. Beginning in 1950, they added live-action films to their animated films. Films like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They added television programs like the Mickey Mouse Club and Disneyland. And shortly after that, Davy Crockett. And then they began to work on a theme park out in Anaheim, California called Disneyland. And the magic began to happen. People would watch an animated film and they would learn about the other films. They would learn about the Mickey Mouse Club and how to be a Mouseketeer. They would find out about what was happening in California. You would watch the Mickey Mouse Club and you would not only become a Mouseketeer, you would learn about coonskin caps at Davy Crockett. You would learn about the films and you would learn about what was happening in California. And then beginning in 1955, you would ride on the rides at Disneyland that featured the characters in the movies and the TV shows, and everything was promoting and supporting everything else. From 1950 to 1959, the Walt Disney revenues grew by 800%, and their profits grew by 600%. And this was no corporate startup. In 1950, the Walt Disney Company was already 22 years old.
A consulting innovator, Dan is also an accomplished author. His new book, Corporate Catalysts: How to Make Your Company More Successful, Whatever Your Title, Income, or Authority, is the manual for aspiring executives. It provides an extremely pragmatic approach to effective leadership, management, and branding. Pat Finneran, Vice President and General Manager at the Boeing Company, says, Corporate Catalyst is a pragmatic approach to business excellence that creates a formula for leaders who want to make a positive difference in their organization. Dan Coughlin, Accelerate Your Business. Dan Coughlin researches every client and customizes every presentation. He spent 2 days working at a Marriott hotel, a day working as a crew member at McDonald's, a day riding with a truck driver for Cassens Transport, and interviewed more than 15 people inside both the St. Louis Cardinals and SBC Communications before giving a presentation for their organizations. For Coca-Cola, Dan interviewed over 20 team members across the U.S. And for the American Bar Association, he interviewed 15 members in 15 different cities.
I was a high school math teacher for 10 years. 1995 was year number 8. Every year in October, the parents would sit down with me at parent-teacher night and they would say, Mr. Coughlin, what does my child need to do to get an A in your class? And every single time they asked me that, I would say, grades are not the most important thing. The most important thing is that your child learns how to learn, that they learn how to think logically. In my algebra class, the key is that they can take information and solve a problem. The grades will soon be forgotten, but the ability to learn will last for a long, long time. And every time I said that, the parents would look me right in the eye and they would say, Mr. Coughlin, we understand. Now, what does my child need to do to get an A in your class? And so in 1995, I got ready for them. And when they sat down, I said, look, for your child to get an A in my class, there are 2 requirements: grunt work and creativity. They have to do the grunt work in terms of taking notes, asking questions, studying for the test. But on the day of the test, they have to be creative. They have to be able to take new information and solve a new problem. To get an A in my class, you have to have grunt work and creativity. Really, I do primarily three things in addition to writing. But I do keynote speeches, I do half-day, full-day seminars, and then I do a lot of executive coaching where I'll work with an executive for 6 months or a year to drive 2 or 3 critical business outcomes. So those are the 3 primary things that I do for clients.
In this fast-paced world, it's easy to get off the mark. But with emphasis on the individual, the groups, and the organization as a whole, your company will be poised for acceleration. Dan Coughlin, accelerate your business. For more information on how Dan Coughlin can help accelerate your organization, contact the provider of this video.